Welcome to the Inject Creativity Live Chat Show. This 30-minute webinar is live on YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. And your comments and questions via these platforms are most welcome. Please keep them kind and respectful. Following this event, you are welcome to join us via the Blue Jeans online conferencing app for a 1-hour NESA-accredited workshop with our guest presenter. Now, here's your host, Dr. Tim Kitchen.
Well, thank you very much, Rob, and welcome to the Inject Creativity live chat show being recorded via Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube on Wednesday, the 17th of June, 2020. I'm your host, Tim Kitchen, Adobe's Senior Education Specialist for the Asia Pacific region, and I'm very pleased to welcome for the first time our new Inject Creativity co-host, Erin Raithke. Let's bring her up on the screen. Hello, Erin. How are you?
Hi.
Welcome to the co-hosting role on this particular show. Are you excited?
I'm so excited.
And for those who don't know who you are, Erin, just give us a brief introduction about what you do and where you live and what you get up to.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, I'm an online learning and media developer at TAFE Queensland, and my role includes the planning, designing, building, maintenance of centralised online and print-ready training. So that's to support an audience of over 5,000 educational and administrative staff within TAFE Queensland, and that training and resource development empowers them to support our over 100,000 active TAFE Queensland students we have each year.
That's amazing. And just while we're having a bit of a chat before we went live, I found out that you're also a scuba diver.
Yes,
wow.
Yes, I am.
Tell us about where you scuba dive.
Oh, scuba diving is amazing. It's the closest that I think most of us are ever going to get to going to another planet. It is fantastic. I actually used to be afraid of the water. I was never a confident swimmer. And I started diving, fell in love with it. I love wreck diving. I've been to places like Truck Lagoon. I lived in the Caribbean for a short period of time working over there in the industry. And yeah, it's one of my pet passions, and I could talk all for the whole session about it. It's really wonderful.
Oh, well, unfortunately, we're not going to allow you to do that, but, maybe next time. So, Erin, welcome to the role as co-host, and thank you very much for joining us. I know you're going to do an outstanding job. And Lauren, we actually have some guests with us, and just want to introduce them. We've got a special guest tonight is Lauren Sayer, the Director of Digital Learning at Haileybury College, and also Paul McLean, who's the Education Consultant and Director of Rare Innovation in New Zealand. And helping us moderate this session and the deeper dive session is Gerry Wang. And let's bring Gerry up here. Hello, Gerry. How are you going?
Hi, Gerry.
Hi, everyone.
What's your role as moderator, Gerry?
Oh, well, I'm here to monitor the chat, get all the banners up and colors, all the fancy stuff that you see on screen at the moment. So, yeah, and that's my job.
Important that I've got one technical job to do, and that is to bring up Gerry's banner at the right time, and I failed miserably just then, but we've got it there now, which is all good. So thanks, Gerry. That's great. And of course, later on today, and Gerry, you're going to say goodbye now. Say goodbye, Gerry. Goodbye, Gerry. And we'll be crossing in about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes. We're going to be crossing to Blue Jeans. And Gerry, I'll get you to put that banner up there, the Blue Jeans banner. And this is where we're going to be heading for the Deeper Dive show. Erin, you've been involved in a number of these episodes as a participant. And you're doing an amazing job in terms of reflections. Tell us about the Spark challenges that you've been doing during the deeper dive sessions.
Yes, well, I've discovered apparently I have a talent for rapidly pulling together session summary. So you have set Spark challenges in the past for people using the Spark platform. So obviously Spark is split into three things. So we've got the page, which builds quick websites that are beautiful pre-done layouts. We have Post, which creates, different dimensions of, posts for Instagram, Facebook, banners, that sort of thing. And then Spark Video. And during the different challenges you set, I've created several summary like almost like portfolio reflections of a whole web page that has, screen grabs and embedded video links that our lovely presenters have shared. I've done little biographies of things I've learned from the presenters, and I like to share those with others at the end of the presentation sessions. And for those people who are interested, I also pop them up onto my profile on the Education Exchange. So if anybody's interested in seeing my visual summary of your lovely sessions, they can actually jump on there and have a bit of a look through for themselves.
And they have been outstanding and really good. And Erin's a past prize winner of the Spark Challenge, and there will be another Spark Challenge later on. Erin, we're going to meet our special guests. The aim of the chat show is to connect you with our guests and get to know them a little bit better. So let's introduce Lauren first of all. Let's bring Lauren to the stage. How are you, Lauren?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. So Lauren, Director of Learning at Haileybury College, which from what I understand is the largest, or if not one of the largest, independent schools in the Southern Hemisphere, which is just incredible because we've got some massive schools around the country. And I think it was the Darwin campus that's kind of tipped you over the edge of some of the other bigger schools. What's it like working at such a massive school like Haileybury?
It's wonderful. And I think in terms of where we now are in Haileybury, we have 4 campuses in Melbourne, 1 in Darwin, a China campus. We also teach across China, Timor-Leste as well, and Vietnam and Manila. So it's a very large organisation, but I think what we do really well is have a small feel as well. So we still know everyone, and it's wonderful to have a role where I get around all of our Melbourne campuses and see everyone. And definitely we're looking forward to next term where we can cross-campus travel again and visit everybody there.
That's great. Thanks, Lauren. And if you want to find out a bit more about Lauren, we actually did an EduChat interview with Lauren recently, and I'll be promoting the EduChats, if we get time, during the Deeper Dive event. And you can find out a lot more about Lauren Sayer during that in-depth, very, very in-depth interview with her. Now, let's welcome our other guest, which is Paul McLean. Paul, you've been a regular contributor to these events over this year, and it's lovely to have you. You're actually going to have a regular spot. About once a month, Paul's going to jump in. Paul's from New Zealand. He's the Director of Rare Innovation, and he also features in an EduChat podcast that we did earlier this year. Welcome, Paul. How are you?
Fantastic thing. Thank you for having me on again. Really appreciate it.
Tell us what Rare Innovations is all about.
Yep, long story very short, just a different approach, I think, to assisting schools with the complexities of digital transformation, going from transactional education, as it is normally, in terms of churning kids through assessment, into hopefully a more creative paradigm where they're treating learners on a one-to-one basis, getting them to think, produce, and develop outputs within the school. So we're shifting the school from that very old model into a new type of territory.
And there was a lot of interesting discussion in that EduChat that we had about the future of education and what we could be learning from the isolation period into the next phase. And there's so much that we can be talking about. And we're looking forward to what you're sharing. Now, Paul, while we've got your attention, what will you be sharing with us during the Deeper Dive session today?
Sure. Long story very short on that one. Putting together, I have put together a value proposition, and it's a bit of a sales pitch today, but I'm not selling anything at all. I've come up with the digital mastery proposition that we talked about during COVID, and my tagline now is creative education is priceless, quite literally. So I've got a completely free value proposition to assist schools through that journey for digital education. No strings, no contracts, no hooks or things, just assisting schools with complete advisory for as long as I possibly can in terms of their transition.
Terrific. Before we find out from Lauren about what she's going to be presenting for us during the Deeper Dive show, let me encourage those of you who are watching live to just follow the chat feature, whether it's through YouTube or through Facebook, our Facebook group, or through Twitter Periscope. Feel free to throw in some questions for our guests and some comments along the way, and that always helps with the chat show. Now, they're the two questions I've got. Erin, have you got a question for our guests?
Yes, well, actually, Lauren, I was wondering if you could share with us how important creativity is in what you do.
Essential. Couldn't be without it. I think one of the things and spoke about it in the Edu Chats, but my previous role before being at Haileybury was heading up teaching and learning in a hospital school, which was 100% opt-in environment. So if you didn't come to school, we believed that you had an excuse. We trusted that you were sick. But what we ended up having was basically nearly all of our students every day come to school, but it was because we were creative educators. It was because we had to create amazing immersive learning experiences every single day. So it's essential, because I think the question I always ask in any of my lessons or when I'm running sessions is, if kids didn't have to come to your session today, would they come? And I think if you're not creative and you're very honest with yourself, a lot of the times the answer's no. And I learned that the hard way sometimes in a hospital school where kids weren't that interested. But I think creativity is the key to making sure that we're engaging everybody every day.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And how about you, Paul? What, creativity is you have a grand plan by the sounds of it. How does creativity work into that from what you have in your vision?
Oh, look, fantastic. I'm glad you've asked me that one. It encapsulates everything, I think, in terms of, similar to Lauren, it's when you think about a learner in a normal school environment, and we put them through the sausage machine, and we provide them with a PowerPoint slide, and do they really engage? Do they really absorb? Yes or no? Who knows? But with a creative learning environment, number one, we get them to think in many, many different ways. Number two, we can generate confidence, and we can take learners with zero confidence and really take them through a total transformative journey. Engagement's not just about looking at the slides anymore. It can be a permanent engagement. And Tim met me a few years ago on how to bring that around, but permanent engagement with almost 24/7 learning environments. Number three, it creates a social construct, in terms of getting genuine collaboration between learners and the teacher. But then number four, for the school, when you've got a community with a range of challenges, the creative learning paradigm enables a school to bring in industry and or create opportunities and outputs relevant to the community circumstance. So there's a whole range of opportunity, not just about using digital tools, but looking at all the elements for transformation that creativity can bring to the table. So yeah, it gets me up in the morning, and it gets me fun, gets me motivated. And when I see it in young people and educators as well, it's a total affront to traditional education. So all good.
I was listening to Melbourne radio last night, and I didn't actually get to listen to the exact show, but I heard the preview for the show. And I'm going to be a little bit controversial here, folks. So I hope you're prepared. But it looks like the ABC were trying to push a line that tech companies are infiltrating schools. And the line was to try and get audience to look at the show. And I really wanted to try and watch the show, but I switched over, and I didn't know exactly what time the conversation was going to happen. But it was interesting that there was this perception that tech companies are coming in as very much just to sell, but also to gather data. And it's all about data mining, which is the incentive that tech companies have to get into schools. And there seems to be this sort of coercive paradigm that was coming through the conversation to promote people to go and listen to it. Unfortunately, I didn't listen to it, so I'm not sure if anyone did who's listening now. But what do you think about that as an idea of you mentioned industry getting involved in education, which is exactly what's happening here. And I can certainly give my perspective on this, but I'd love to hear from you guys particularly Lauren, I suppose, who's still in a school. What's your attitude to companies like Adobe and Google and Microsoft and Apple, the big IT companies, literally infiltrating, as they were saying?
I don't think it's an infiltration. I think it's a partnership. And I think one of the things that we're seeing, and I think universities are very scared of industry being a strong partner with K-12, because what we're starting to see is our students that are really, really high flyers that have a strong industry portfolio, the big companies may not want them to have a university degree anymore or those sorts of things, but they want them out and being able to work straight away. So I think one of the things that we aim to do is make sure that whatever we're giving our students in terms of skills, they are industry skills, because I think university is one pathway. It's not the only pathway anymore. And some students will go straight into industry. I read an article in the Financial Review today that I think it was 30% of Year 12s that we interviewed have a side gig on the side that they've made a lot of money at the moment during this COVID period. And it'll be those industry skills that will keep them either in industry all the way through or in university and serve them well. But it's a partnership. And I think one of the things is probably the opposite I'm not a big fan of, which is the dumbing down of apps with schools, of actually instead of using Photoshop, using a very low-level schoolified photo app. And actually, I think it's wonderful that industry partner with schools and give schools the skills, because when you leave and school software number one, that's not going to be on their laptop on December 15th. And we need to make sure that they've got skills that they can take all the way through.
Yeah, I totally agree. When industry and schools have the opportunity to collaborate, really truly collaborate, it gives students, especially and learners of all kinds and all ages, the opportunity to actually have that school assist them cutting through the noise and starting to understand the value of, what is a really genuine educational experience that will be of value in the future, and what happens to be maybe some other organization that might have, good intentions but may not have been as thoughtful with the way they've constructed the learning resources, or just might not be able to keep their finger on the pulse of what industry is really after. And that full collaboration and being able to make sure that, as you said, once the school term's over and their school ID runs out, they need to be able to apply that to things they can access in real time.
Paul, you were nodding furiously before. You do. Thanks, Gerry. Barbara Tate, who's with us at the moment through Facebook, says industry is immersed in the STEM program in the Hunter region.
You'll need to unlock your iPad first.
Oh, Siri's back. Hello, Siri. Thank you, Siri. Siri wanted to ask a question too. But Paul, what's your perspective on it?
Oh, look, I've had that argument many, many times around industry involvement, and in the two major programs I've ran in recent years, industry was heavily involved. And the argument I place is this. In New Zealand, for example, our youth unemployment is 58,000 at the moment, and that's a reflection of what I call the Victorian Revolution teaching model, teacher at the front and post-learning assessment. Post-learning assessment was built in 500 BC. So when you think about that 55 or 58,000, that costs about $12 billion in opportunity cost in the economy at the moment. So my argument is, if we've got an aversion to industry involved, I've got an argument to the ideologies which preserve the traditional model. So it's easy to rebut all day long. What I've experienced about industry involvement, there's generally, yes, there are corporate drivers. Absolutely, everybody's got to have them. But with a partnership approach and shared outcomes and shared objectives, there is no threat. It's actually a win-win opportunity. And to Lauren's point around low-grade technologies, it's the ideology of basic learning which sees these low-grade tech installed in schools which have got no value to the learner at the end of the day. And so you've got an economic argument, you've got the creative argument, you've got the ideology argument, which can all be swept aside with the fear of the corporate involvement.
Well, we've got some hand clapping here from a Facebook user who is unidentified, but I think they wanted to have their hands clapping. So let's do that. Let's give you guys a round of applause. How's that? With sound effects and everything. And Barbara's got another comment here too. She's saying that New South Wales schools information and software syllabus has not been updated since 2003. Yeah, which is New South Wales is not unique. It's happening across the board.
I think that's the industry part as well. Of one of the strengths of an industry is that it constantly updates, and I think there's a real power. And I think one of the things that's been quite concerning during this period is the amount of free apps that have sort of flooded the market in COVID, and they may or may not be available when the kids go back to school, and they may or may not last. And I think there's a real safety with the big names in industry, because I've used Adobe from secondary school right through to however old I am today. And I've done the same with Microsoft and other apps. And I think the big benefit is knowing that there's a level of security and business that's sitting under there, that you can give kids skills that they can use out of school. So I think Spark and the ability to use Spark video to create TikTok style videos, but in a really safe, secure way at school. And then if they choose to use that outside of school to be further engaged, that's a wonderful bonus. But I think at a school, we do have a duty of care to make sure that what we're using has a strong backing in terms of safety and security. And I think that's one of the comforts I have with industry partnerships.
Absolutely.
Julia Bentley's agreeing.
It's a
there.
life lesson, teaching kids to be discerning about the applications that they use, and understanding that there are people, real people, that make decisions that you may not agree with, that sit behind all of these things. Whereas, when you've got that transparency in an established relationship, it changes the paradigms of what they expect to get from their service as well, which is great.
Gerry, Stephen Colbert's added a comment here in the chat too. The piece in The Monthly was truly a superb piece of journalism, gave a good outline of EdTech. Stephen, it'd be great if we could get a link to that if possible. I don't know if you can do that, maybe in the Deeper Dive show, and then put it into the chat, because I'd like to find out a bit more about that. Stephen was our special guest last week, so it's lovely to have you back with us again. And Stephen has been popping up in the media quite a bit in the last month or so. He's become quite a thought leader coming out of Victoria, and it's lovely to have you.
Eddie Maguire.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, anything else to add there?
Oh, look, I think in terms of the industry platforms and tools, if you think about professional learning development, which normally occurs in schools at 3:30 or a 5:30 on a Monday or a Wednesday, if you look at the, I'm going to promote the Adobe Exchange here and the Inject Creativity program, it totally transforms how PLD can occur in schools. And you're going to get that with Adobe, you get it with Microsoft, you get it with Autodesk, but it really increases the value of the profession, number one, in terms of top grade learning. Number two, it enables educators to do things in the comfort of the home, the home, rather than sitting there in that 3:30 sleeping session. And if you didn't have the industry partnerships to make that occur, it could be a pretty challenging place. So I think there's huge amounts of potential for it.
Stephen's just put up the link for that article. Stephen, I'll get you to do it again in the Deeper Dive show, because then when it's in that chat pod, we can just click on it and it'll become an active link. So thank you for looking that up. Appreciate it. Jason's got an interesting comment here. He's on Facebook. Jason's also from Brisbane there, one of your locals, Aaron. Says, good points, lots of free trial apps flooding the market. However, the tried and tested will push through the noise, especially Adobe with its industry level use and improved in-app learning options. And Jason did a fantastic Deeper Dive session for us about a month or so ago, linking Minecraft with Adobe Aero. It was brilliant, just brilliant to see those links, which was great. Folks, we're going to be wrapping up the conversation very soon. Erin, any questions, comments, thoughts from you before we wrap things up?
Well, we've got such, wonderfully verbose guests today. I'm sort of looking at some of my pre-prepared questions going, you've already answered them. I guess a good question. Do you feel that online learning platforms or, MOOCs that, like the Adobe Education Exchange, where you can jump on, are working to redefine what is considered to be, the viability of fully online learning and delivery that's self-paced? Because I know that there's a bit of a history where there's a perception that you can't replace face-to-face at all. What's your opinion on that?
Quick responses, guys.
It my just thoughts. It's not a replacement to it. It's a complementary tool. So if you have multiple content platforms to suit a learner or educator's needs, it's a good way to go. But it's not the be all and end all. It's just a complementary way of doing it.
I think it's the big change. And if you look at the two big players in my personal life, that would be Netflix and Spotify. And you know, my wish in life is to have someone that knows me as well as Spotify does, how it works. But that on-demand learning of being able, they know what you want and they know when to give it to you. And I think that that's the place that I really love the Adobe Education Exchange is, I'll do this and it'll go, oh, would you like to do this? And that suggestive nature is incredible. And I think the future of personalised learning online.
You have your yes, I would little moment.
All right, we're going to wrap up the chat show. We're going to be moving to Blue Jeans very soon. I've got a little bit of housekeeping to do, but give these guys a round of applause for their conversations, and thank you so much for sharing with us. I'm just going to drop you guys off, and we'll be joining you guys very soon. In about 4 minutes, we'll be in the Blue Jeans for the Deeper Dive show. While we're jumping these guys off, I would like to share my screen and just see if I can quickly give you a bit of information about what's happening in the world of Adobe in education. Let's just make this full screen so that you can see it a bit better. We have recently hit over 40,000 ANZ members on the Education Exchange, which was just mentioned before as a great resource. Globally, we're well over the 800,000. In terms of my target, I was hoping to get 6,000 new teachers on the Education Exchange from ANZ by the end of the year. And you can see we're tracking pretty well. The latest count is 4,578. So thank you for driving active use and awareness of the Education Exchange. Please keep doing that. There's some wonderful resources on there for teachers in all areas. Speaking of wonderful resources, this was only put up a week or so ago, the Premier Rush EduTip. And there's the link. I don't know if Gerry's got access to that to put that into the chat, but we'll probably put it in later on in the Deeper Dive show anyway. So that's the most up-to-date EduTip, worth having a look. The Adobe Creative Educators program is being launched next week. We've been talking about it now for a few weeks, and we encourage you to join the wait list. I think there's about close to 3,000 teachers now on the wait list, ready to go into the launch next week. It is replacing the Adobe Campus Leader program, and it's a wonderful low-touch network program from Adobe for educators who are just interested in being creative in any curriculum areas. The summit is going online this year, 29th of September to the 1st of October. There's the link. We'll put the links as active links in the Deeper Dive show so that you can just click on it and then bookmark them. But try and keep those dates free, particularly the Wednesday the 30th of September. That's a day for all educators. The other 2 days will be for our Adobe Education Leaders, and the Thursday for our Adobe Education Leaders and our Adobe Creative Educators. Our Facebook group is becoming a really important channel now for any teacher who just wants to keep up to date with the world of Adobe in education. So if you haven't joined it, please do so. It is a closed group, so once you've joined, just wait to be accepted. That'd be terrific. And that ends our chat show for tonight. We are about to move into the Blue Jeans room. So again, I want to thank Lauren and Paul, and of course, Erin and Gerry for helping us out with the chat show. And Gerry, we're just going to stop sharing here so that you can bring in the link. There it is, bluejeans.com/kitchen.adobe. That's the link you need to now move into, because in about a minute's time, we're going to be starting the Deeper Dive show. So thanks everyone for being part of this particular presentation. And let me just bring Erin back here, my co-host. Thank you so much for co-hosting for the very first time. She did a good job, didn't she? I think she deserves a round of applause.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure.
And we'll be seeing Erin again and everyone else in the Blue Jeans room in about 45 seconds. See you then. Thanks, folks. Bye-bye.